Please give your name first, and if you have an organization that you're involved in, mention it so that we can situate your background. Go ahead.
First off, thank you. Great talk. I was just reading today in the paper kind of about Bitcoin.
Yes.
And I wonder if that has any connection with what we've been talking about. Apparently, Bitcoin has gone from, I think you could buy one for $10, and now they're $140.
Yes.
They're causing hyperinflation. Is that not kind of the opposite of what we're trying to do with, not alternate currencies,
yes.
What do you call it?
Okay, I'll repeat the question. The gentleman asks whether Bitcoin is part of what we're talking about. And the short answer is no. And let me tell you why. Remember how Jackie defined a currency, or money. It is an agreement in a community to use something as a medium of exchange. Bitcoin is a speculative tool and designed it for that purpose. The rational thing to do with a Bitcoin is to try to grab a few and sit on it forever, because it's designed to go up in value, and it's doing it, okay? Now, the instability of the conventional system will actually feed that, of course, but the point is, it's not really a medium of exchange. Its primary role is not that, okay? Its primary role is speculative. So I would not put it in the same category. Also, I would highlight the point that the cooperative currencies, the social purpose currencies, make them very transparent. Do the opposite of what they are doing, which is make it completely opaque, that nobody knows who has it and what for. That's not the value system that is compatible with a cooperative world. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Will, and I'm just wondering if you could talk more with regards to the timeshare systems, the ones that are based on a reciprocal exchange
Yes.
of a commitment, basically.
Correct.
I'm just wondering how you guard against hoarding-induced scarcity in those. It made me think of the famous story of the New York City babysitting group that a bunch of parents put together, where they agreed to babysit each other's kids, and in exchange they get a voucher for having their own kids babysitted for that same amount of time. And that ended, from what I remember from when I've read about it, it ended with the parents, a few of the parents accumulating enough of these and not being willing to spend them, saving them up for vacation down the line or whatever, that choked off the supply of the whole system of these coupons, and then nobody got their kids looked after at all, and it kind of broke down. So how, I mean, you mentioned the Japan example where there seems to be transferable, transferable vouchers, but can you just speak to that issue of scarcity and the risk of hoarding?
Okay.
Well, I think one of the interesting things about these time-based is that you can't turn them in for holidays abroad. You mean, so it's not, time currencies are not transferable into dollars or yen or whatever else.
But in the New York one, it was parents saving up for, like, they wanted to do like a 5-6 hour night out, and they wouldn't spend it, and then that eventually enough.
Yeah.
The episode you're mentioning was actually written up by Krugman, if I remember correctly. Okay, so let me explain the differences. First of all, we have 400 systems that are working. Okay, that have not fallen apart, right? So that's a good beginning. So the second thing is the philosophy of time banking is different. Okay, everybody's time is equal, right? So it's not a market mechanism in that sense. One of the consequences is that you don't have dentists in time banking, right? So it works best in an environment where everybody's time is roughly equal. Things like students, retired people, unemployed people, get those. That's the environment in which the time banking has been working well. And finally, there is someone administering it. It's not just left completely open. There is someone who's in charge of it. And basically, one of the lessons to teach is, by the way, don't accumulate, okay? Because when you just accumulate, what you're doing, you're not making it possible for other people to request services from you, okay? So they discourage it. In some cases, like in Switzerland, they have introduced a demurrage fee, a negative interest rate on the currency, so that it actually would be spent. I prefer myself a system that we have been working on in Austria, where every time you go to zero, you get a bonus. Okay? So actually, the optimal use of a time banking system is going many times to zero. And encourage that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Hello.
Yes, my name is Bianca. I have a question. Who is doing ongoing journalism, making public all the transactions of financial, economic activities, transactions that different cities and countries are doing? So we can just go, for instance, to the website or to that newspaper online and read updates and stories and successes. Is anybody doing that kind of publishing online?
Yes, actually, if you go in and just type in complementary currencies or cooperative currencies, I think you'll be amazed at the amount of information there is. You can download YouTube videos. I know Bernard's website, www.lietaer-dunne, has a lot of material. And I'm putting up a website called Let's Rethink Money that will be going live pretty soon. That will have an awful lot of these anecdotes and stories.
So in other words,
there is no centralized place that does it all, if that's what you're asking.
In other words, anybody who doesn't know anything, that did not attend your presentation, you can just go online and just educate yourself.
Yes,
absolutely.
There's a lot of information available. Okay? But there is no central place that does it. By the way, just for information, currently the European Union is funding with €6 million a project in Northern Europe, including 4 countries, where one of the products will be a platform where that kind of information would be systematized.
Hi there, good evening.
Hi, my name's Elena Leonard. I guess the hat I'll wear is the International Society for System Science. And what I'd like to know is how this can be used in the current situation in Europe, where you have so much disparity between the strength of the economies between, say, Greece and Germany.
Oh, that's one of Bernard's favorite topics.
Actually, we have been talking, I've been talking with Greece and more other places through the University of Athens. There is one currency which I have not presented here, which is in the book that Jackie co-authored, called the Civic. This would be a currency that's issued by a city, because the real problems, the social problems that are currently exploding in countries like Greece or Spain, are at the city level. It's not at the central government, okay? The city or regional level. And the city would issue a currency, we call it the Civic, which is 1 hour of service, and require that if you want to live in that city, each household needs to bring 20 units of that. Now, if you don't want to do anything with that, that's fine, but then you buy them from people who do more. And in an environment where we have 50% unemployment, the conventional solutions don't work anymore. Everything stops. They cannot even have the money to pay their teachers or their police guys, okay? So in other words, this would actually provide a mechanism of decentralized, for those who are interested in economics, the Keynesian relaunch is from top down, this is bottom up. And cities could do it. They have not implemented yet, but they're looking at it. Okay, so yes.
Hi, my name's Sean. I don't have an affiliation with an organization.
That's perfectly acceptable.
Okay. Okay.
You're a citizen, aren't you?
Yes.
And a human.
A dual citizen, too.
You qualify too, bro.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for coming to give the talk. These are some wonderful examples. I like the Brazilian one. You don't have to put any more buses, spend any more money, and yet you can get people to do work and get the token currency.
Yes.
Okay.
That idea is actually being talked about now in Tucson, Arizona.
It sounds like a great idea because there's no extra money that really has to be spent on it. You just give people free tokens, they use them up. The bus is a fixed cost running, right?
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. So yeah, it's great. The thing that catches the question is about is you mentioned like in the very beginning that like I think like 81% of all the wealth in the world right now is concentrated in like 0.1% of the population. Well, you know, that wealth is concentrated in the control of resources and the control of governments and the determinant of economic policies and the way markets affect people, right? And so on. So I'm wondering, I don't want to be negative, but does this have any effect on concentrations of wealth or its political impact or, that kind of thing? Because you're not talking about this replacing anything. It's going to be concurrently, except with real money, I can buy land, factories, people, and with this, I can get I can get some services,
With
right?
government-chosen tax money, you can make that happen. So, for example, the solution I was mentioning in the Civic, you actually give value to a currency. You can start buying real estate and stuff like that with that currency because it has a value given. You always have the government's chosen taxpayers' currency will be a dominant currency.
But
So-
then you won't impinge on this already huge
Yes,
disparity.
you can. We are talking about currencies
Well, yeah,
that
but
are
like,
doing that.
But in a very
Well,
if it ever
You have
becomes
to start somewhere.
okay, but if it ever becomes significant, the wealth will stop that, won't it?
I think what we're talking about is a tool, is democratizing money for the first time in human history. Okay? And if you have genuine democratized money, you actually give tools to the people to create wealth without having to do it in the one currency that's currently controlled by the wealthiest. You can do it bottom up. It's possible. So yes, you can have an effect on that. It won't happen the first day. Okay, let's be realistic. That's realistic. But
if it becomes significant enough, these forces will use their economic and political power to
Not in the case, for
Well-
example, of Curitiba, for example.
You mentioned the weir. Wasn't that the
Switzerland.
corporations trying to stop
Yes.
the weir, right?
well, yeah, but they have not succeeded.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
in other words, I think that the fact that it is a monopoly of a single type of currency, which actually systematically always sucks resources from the bottom to the top, okay, is the difficulty. And by having another system that is fed another way, and which could provide the same values, you could actually, okay, let me give you an extreme example. A city requires 1,000 hours of service to live in that city. That hour will be worth hundreds of dollars. Because very few people can afford to spend hundreds of hours for civic duty, right? So in other words, the value of the currency you're creating can be determined by that way. So I'm not saying you should do that. Certainly don't start there. But I'm just giving you where the levers are for changing the process. The process of accumulation can be reversed without having to kill everybody, which is the other alternative. It has been tried a few times and it didn't work. Yes.
Hello, my name's Chuck. I'm a writer. I write about the aerospace industry and the mining industry, and I was particularly taken with your examples of what's happening in Switzerland with, I think it was called the weir or
Yes.
something like that, especially about how it seemed to even out some of the cycles, some of the business
Correct.
cycles. Are there any examples of business associations or manufacturing organizations that have developed any sort of alternative currency for their association members, and what happened with them?
Yeah.
The biggest example we have is the Swiss example. Okay? We have been talking, now there is actually another tool which is better, which is called the C3, come on.
Circuit.
What is the English version of it?
It's-
Circuito de Crédito Comercial is the Spanish name for it, so I know it under the Spanish name. It's been developed in Brazil. C3. No, not the L3. That's different. The C3 is a commercial credit circuit. Okay? That is a convertible weir. A currency, it's more complicated, that's the reason I didn't talk about it tonight, but it's a more complicated model, which actually makes the currency convertible into national currency on demand. And that makes it possible for governments, including local governments, to accept it in payment of taxes, because it is convertible in demand. The weir is not convertible, okay? And therefore the government cannot accept it. What does it do with, a weir unit? You can only have 25% of the businesses in the country sell something to the government. It won't work. You need to have a public procurement process. That it's not possible with a quarter of the businesses. So that's the direction I would suggest you're looking at, the C3. It is the model that we are currently in the process of talking about introducing in 3 cities in the United States. And there is an experiment going on in Europe, and there's the system in Brazil and in Uruguay already operational, and 5. So look at the C3. It's described in the book, but it's also available on the web. Look on my website, you'll find C3 documents, summaries.
Thank you very much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Justin, what are you doing here?
Asking a question. Hey, earlier in your presentation, you mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, that...
Sorry, actually, can you wait till the subway?
Certainly, yeah.
It's
I can't compete with that.
Good, please start again.
Yes, just wanted to pick up on a comment you mentioned in the earlier part of your presentation. You said something like 70% of chronic medical conditions have their origin in the medical establishment?
No, in a medical intervention.
Medical intervention, okay. If that's correct, can you just sort of clarify what that means and what your sources are on that? Because that's a little bit hard to believe.
All right. One of the first sources is Illich, a study by Illich on medical. Illich, yes. Ivan Illich. There is also work done in Germany on this. The study called Money and Sustainability has a whole section on that, which provides in the footnotes the references for that. There is, yeah. By the way, the process is the following. You have a stomach problem, okay, I'll give you a bunch of pills, and I blow up your kidneys, you know. But you solve your stomach problem. This is the sequence process. It's highly specialized. You go to a specialist of your stomach thing, and he's going to resolve it.
Hi there.
Yes.
Hi. So my name is Jacob, and I'm with. I have many affiliations. I'm affiliated with everything and everyone.
Welcome.
Specifically, though, Occupy Gardens and the new Toronto Seed Library.
Fantastic.
And so in the fall, I was inspired by the Tool Library. While you're getting your garden tools, why not get some free seeds?
Fabulous.
At the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that fish are swimming in water and they're not very likely to understand or to question that. Similarly, we're swimming in money, but within this economic system, we're engaged in an even larger system, our ecological system.
Correct.
Yes.
And you mentioned how our current monetary system devalues social capital. There's many other forms of capital, human capital, your lived experience, your education knowledge, but then your natural capital,
Yes.
things that you can acquire in exchange with your natural environment. And so specifically when we exchange seeds with one another, we then exchange those seeds with the earth, and then the earth reproduces even more seeds, and then we're able to rapidly increase.
Yes. Beautiful.
And so I haven't read the book, but I'm wondering whether or not there's other kinds of currencies that consider natural exchange, or I don't even know what you would want to call it, but things that are thinking more holistically, that it's not just me exchanging with you, but we're exchanging together with the earth. The earth is then exchanging back to us, and it's a holistic.
Yeah, I think one of the really exciting things about this whole area is there are at least 50 different designs of currencies. That's just designs. And what is really exciting for both Bernard and I, as we've traveled through 19 cities over 9 weeks, is actually coming back again, and as a result of reading the book or whatever small contribution we've made to the conversation, is the conversation you guys are going to have within your communities, whether it be a neighborhood, a village, an old people's retirement home, whatever it is. So we're very, very excited to see what you can actually come up with in terms of a currency. And the most important thing is that there is a circuit, and what that circuit is going to be, and who is your community.
In addition to what Jackie just said, kind of reinforcing it from another angle, the conventional economic thinking is you have the economy, and everything that is not in the equations is considered an externality. And that includes the environment, that includes the social dimension, that includes everything that they are not taken care of. It's an externality. The paradigm behind what we are talking about is the following. You have the economy. The economy is a subset of the societal work of human society, and that is a subset to the biosphere. And in fact, the models we are talking about are compatible with that, because they're not autistic. They don't function on their own. They actually tie in with the social world. We've given you social examples. There are ecological examples, okay? So there are several that are available, but the ones that you will come up with would be of interest to us, too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Hi, I'm Christopher Lamb from the Committee on Monetary and Economic Reform, otherwise known as CUMMER in the city.
Oh, I read some of your earlier texts 15 years ago.
Definitely not me, but the ones that came before me, definitely. It was actually founded by a man named John Hodson, who was an economics professor in Waterloo.
Yes. I have 2 volumes. I have 2 volumes.
I'm glad. I'd love to have you at a meeting if you're still in town for the rest of the week. We're pretty much behind the use of social credit. So I'm all behind the local currencies and complementary currencies, but I also believe that we have to actually focus on the larger patriarchal single currency to deal with our economic global issues and national issues. I'm not sure if you're aware, but here in Canada, we do have a nationalized central bank. And within our Bank of Canada Act, we also have provisions, Article 18I and J, that state for the use of social credit. So it says that any time that there is an economic crisis, that we should go to the Bank of Canada that would then create money and then infuse it into the government, into the municipalities, provincial, and federal budgets.
Has it done that?
It hasn't done that since before 1971. It actually stopped in 1974, where you can look at all the graphs, and our debt just goes like sky high. Before 1974, we were at a national debt level of 33 billion, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And now we're sitting at like $630 billion worth of debt. Yeah. So within that small amount of time, like all of a sudden it's increased so substantially. So I'm really wondering about what your thoughts are on the use of social credit and public credit as a means of trying to bear down on our national debt levels and kind of come to some sort of sustainability within our system.
Well, we are in favor of it. Okay. I think the thing that is not understood, first of all, let me make 2 comments. The majority of the central banks in the world are actually publicly owned. There are only 6 that are privately owned, the most prominent being the Federal Reserve. Okay? Mm-hmm. But there are 5 others. I made a study of the central banks in the world, and actually their behavior pattern is not different, whether they are publicly owned or whether they're privately owned. They're doing their job. Mm-hmm. And actually I was told by the Secretary General of the Bank of International Settlements, when I was in my own central banking days back in the late 70s, that central banks exist to keep the monopoly of the system going in favor of the banks, period. So,
it seems that way.
So they keep doing that. So the thing that's missing is the tax issue. It's not just issuing the currency. It's giving it value. Mm-hmm. Okay? So if you had that understood, you could actually create a currency that's more valuable than the Canadian dollars.
Okay.
Okay? But if you don't do that, it can't. It's always be marginal compared to the other.
Do you believe that it would be inflationary if you were to
Fiat currencies always had that danger.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm in favor of things like the WIR or the C3, which I mentioned earlier, which are mutual credit systems, because that is not inflationary. Okay, they're good.
Do you understand why it's not inflationary?
Not entirely, but I do understand how it's a lot
It's important that you get this piece.
All right.
Yeah.
Inflation, the dominant theory, there are several theories around inflation generation, but the dominant theory these days is that the quantity of money created, when it is higher than the goods and services available, the currency devalues. Okay? Mm-hmm. So that basically is a process where you have a fiat currency, created the currency out of nothing, that can happen. In the case of a mutual credit system, where I sell you something and we create a currency between the two of us as a credit and a debit, the good is there. The currency is created when the good is there first. The good or service is delivered. So it cannot create inflation. Okay? So that's why it's more solid in that model. And also gives more power bottom up, which is need to balance out the top down one.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name's Steele. I don't have an affiliation. I was interested by this concept of negative interest.
Yes.
And I've heard it said that we're currently in a climate of negative interest? Because if you look at savings interest rates,
Yeah.
inflation is greater than savings interest rates. And I was wondering
I
if there's
understand.
any relationship there.
It's factually, we're talking of two different things. Let me make the distinction. When you have an inflation rate that's higher than the interest rate, that's not what we're talking about. It can have an effect that's similar, i.e. that people get out of money, try to spend it, because it's going to be, you will not accumulate, less accumulate tendency of accumulating the currency. However, demurrage is different. In inflation, the value of the unit of account depreciates. And therefore, all the social contracts made around money, pensions, rentals, and all that stuff become meaningless when you have hyperinflation. Okay? In the case of demurrage, it is like a parking fee on money. When you put your car in a parking fee area, your car does not devalue. You have to pay something to leave it there. You understand the distinction?
Yes.
So, let me give you another metaphor. Let's assume that we all suddenly run to the window, to one of the windows here in the back, okay? You could interpret that as a good or bad. One of the things with inflation, it would be that we run away from a fire. With the other system, there is a star out there, okay, that everybody goes to look at. The behavior is dissimilar, but the consequences are not. Okay? Inflation is destructive of societal fabric. Demurrage not.
Do you understand what demurrage is?
It's a negative
Parking fee.
A parking
It's,
fee, yes.
it's like money rusts. So it's a pure medium of exchange. So it's designed to circulate in a particular area. So your money will rust, which means that you'll either have to pay a percentage of the face value in order to keep it. So everybody is then incentivized to spend that money. Okay. So, and that really gets an economy moving.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi there.
I'm Steve. I'm part of the Zeitgeist Toronto chapter and sort of a member of IRB. I think I've got a logistical question, but I just want to clarify that I understood something correctly in the talk. To compare the WEIR and the C3, I think you guys were saying that the C3 would be accepted by governments.
Could be.
Could be as a form of paying taxes, but the WEIR is not.
Yes.
Yes.
The reason being that the WEIR is not convertible into national money, and therefore the entire procurement process in the government, okay, would have to be changed.
Right. When you were explaining the WEIR, I think I heard you say that it's perfectly legal as long as taxes are paid on it.
Correct.
Correct.
So
but that's true for all currencies.
I'm just curious, how do you pay taxes or how do you declare income and so forth on a currency that's not a standard currency?
It's an interesting question. In time banking, for example, in the United States, the IRS, the Internal Revenue, has made 3 rulings that in the United States, time banking is tax exempt because it's doing social purpose good, where the tax money would have to be spent in order to do that social good. So anybody working in the United States and using time banking does not have to pay taxes on that.
That's the exception.
That's the exception that we know about, yeah.
Answering your question directly, in the case of the Swiss franc and the WEIR, it's very simple. 1 WEIR equals 1 Swiss franc.
Okay.
Right? So you have your accounts. All right, at the end of the year, you declare a profit and loss at the sum of the whole thing.
Okay.
And you pay your taxes on the sum of the whole thing.
Okay.
And as the WEIR is purely electronic, it's easily auditable.
Okay.
Okay? So it's not a way of cheating on taxes.
So in a way, isn't it almost the same as being accepted for taxes?
No.
What's the difference there?
The taxes that you're paying, you cannot pay them in WEIR. You need to pay them in Swiss francs.
Okay.
So that's also one of the reasons that we're talking about complementary currencies. You cannot have a business that works only in WEIR. Okay?
Okay.
You would not be able to fulfill your tax duties. You need to have, it's a marginal thing, you have 20-30% of it in weir, okay? But don't go to 90%.
Okay. And just one final follow-up. How do you find out, like, I guess in the case of the weir, the Swiss government told people that one weir is equal to one Swiss franc?
No.
It's a collective. It's a cooperative. And the cooperative themselves, the members, made up the rules.
So how can people say, if we're starting up a complementary currency in Canada, how can we find out what our currency should be exchanged in exchange for a Canadian dollar?
Well,
it's not exchangeable. In the case of the weir, it's not exchangeable. You cannot buy weir with Swiss francs, and you cannot sell weir for Swiss francs. It's a second currency cycle.
Okay.
Right?
So what we're suggesting is that if you design a currency, whatever it is, that you go have a chat with your local, tax official and find out how they want to handle it. Edgar Kahn, got the rulings from the IRS, and if you can prove that your thing is wonderfully social purpose, because what I heard is talking about social purpose, the provincial government or maybe the national government may change its mind. I don't know, but boys and girls, you've got to pay your taxes. This is not some kind of tax dodge.
Hi, I'm Corey, and thank you again for being here. I was part of Engineers Without Borders for many years, and I've briefly skirted with the Zeitgeist group, and hopefully getting more time to do that finally. But my question is, it's a hypothetical question, and I'm not looking for a perfect answer, because there may never be one, right? Exactly. The question I have is for major projects that require, in this common area, a huge investment, which involves a huge risk. So most of these economic systems we've talked about have been bottom-up with minor risk. They've been about cleaning up things, or they've been about helping other people. But we're talking about major energy systems or major food systems and getting people on board. So my question is, if we don't include risk or in development or planning, how do we stop major inflationary procedures if we're using alternative currencies? Or in another sense, if let's say someone invested 5 million units of something to build something, how do we get away from accumulation of wealth? Because in that sense, that person who invests or that body who invests will probably want the highest return. So my question is, how can we create an alternative currency that provides for a very beneficial part of society, for instance, let's say environmental cleanup, but doesn't cause an accumulation of wealth?
Can I tweak your question a little bit?
Sure.
We always say complementary or cooperative. We never say alternative, because we're not replacing the official system. We're augmenting it.
Well, nonetheless.
Yeah, nonetheless. So it depends on the design.
Yes.
Totally.
So just
environmental applications, there's one that I worked on in Japan with the Biwa area, south of Kyoto. And it would actually be with a prefecture. The unit similar to the county in the States. I don't know what would be bigger than a province, I guess, here. Again, the key is when you require a payment in a particular currency, you actually create a demand for that currency and avoids its accumulation. Okay? If you had the civic, that example I told you, by having the city require 20 civics of every household, it gives value to the currency, but nobody accumulates it, right? It has no meaning to accumulate it, right? There's no incentive to accumulate it either.
And you can also make sure there isn't hoarding by having a demurrage charge, for example, because it's hot money, you want to spend it.
You need to make the list of all your conditions for the currency, and make a design that actually there are enough features that are variable. We create a design that actually makes sure that nobody accumulates it. Demurrage is one example, or requirement of a payment of a contribution in that currency is another way. But
sorry, did I cut you off?
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. One of the things we're really getting involved in our conversation around 19 different cities that we've traveled through, which I'm sure you're tired of hearing about, but anyway, we're impressed, is that We are actually thinking of setting up some design workshops where where Bernard has actually done this before in Switzerland, is actually training the trainers to actually get into the deep issues of currency design. And I think Bernard now realized that it is possible to teach this.
Yes.
But it would be very good to get really drilled down and see the functional dynamics of interest, no interest, a demurrage charge, and what that does to your currency, to look at the design of the circuits. How do you design governance of a currency? And this is probably one of the most critical things. One of the reasons why currencies fail is they have not had the deeper conversation around organization and consequences. And I think some of the best work we've come across is the work of Elinor Ostrom, who won the Nobel Prize for her work on the commons. And I think the big aha that we've gotten on this trip is that money is a commons and should be organized and run as a commons. Do you want to get into the particulars of the commons?
That goes beyond his question, actually.
It does, but I think it's a very important thing because
Yes,
you're all thinking
yes.
of designing currencies now.
The field, I would describe the whole field of complementary currencies at the same stage as Wright Brothers Aeronautics. Okay? It has flown, it's flying, but we're still learning why. Okay? It actually certainly, let's consider it a miracle that it flies. Now that we have found out that it flies, how the hell do we make this more manageable and predictable and all that stuff? That's where we are. And as far as I know, the first course teaching how to design currencies was the one I gave in Switzerland last September. And now we know it's teachable. Out of that workshop, there have been 7 new designs have come out, okay, for new problems all around the world. So, of which 4 are being implemented as we speak. So it's teachable, but it's a new field. And the first thing to do is learn more, okay? I mean, there's a lot of materials available that are, start by learning what's there already, what the systems that are working, why they're working, why they're not working. And it's a learning field.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Rory. I'm with the Toronto Zeitgeist chapter. And my question is, will it become logical to build goods in the future with complementary currencies that will last a very long time? Or in other words, will it be, will planned obsolescence be reduced?
The planned obsolescence is actually a result of short-term thinking, right? It's the optimization short-term of the benefits. I believe that ExxonMobil would make different decisions. They were thinking for 100 years as opposed to the next 2 quarters. So would General Motors, okay? So in other words, one can do it, all right? And one of the proposals of the currency that is dealt with in the book is the Terra, which is a global currency that makes it profitable to think long-term. Currently, it's profitable to only think short-term. And we can design, there's a proposal for a currency that actually makes it profitable to think long-term. That would be the answer to your question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name is Ben, and I have a question that has been already asked. However, I don't fully understand it. So in local currency, for example, in the WEIR system, I don't understand why inflation is, there is no inflation. And the first step, which is everyone has 0 amount of this currency. So you create a product, say product X. How does the exchange happen in the first step?
Okay. Let's assume that I make jackets. Okay. Let's assume this costs 500 Swiss francs. Okay.
All right.
Or 500 WEIR.
All
And we
right.
are in the WEIR system. Okay. Good. We're both members of the WEIR. I sell you my jacket. I have a credit of 500 WEIR. You have a debit of 500 WEIR.
Okay,
You need to sell to someone in the 75,000 businesses that are a member of the WEIR something to compensate for what you purchased. It doesn't have to be with me. Now, the reason that that does not create inflation is that inflation creates a currency without any link to the physical world. Okay? And when there is more currency than the physical world goods and services, the inflation starts happening. Okay? In the case here, the jacket is first.
Yeah.
All right? If there is no jacket, there's no deal. Right?
Okay, so what if someone continues to buy stuff because from this system it looks
Sorry,
like...
could you hold your question? We can't hear with the subway.
No,
I'm sorry.
I can...
You can hear it, I can't.
Yeah, let me repeat the question.
Yeah, please repeat the question.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's say I buy your jacket. Okay, so I'm in debit. So
Yes.
let's say I buy your jacket again. Is there a limit to
Yes.
how much in debit I can be?
Yes.
Yes.
In the WEIR system, it's a cooperative. The rules are set up by the members. The 75,000 businesses that are members have a vote on what the rules of the game is. Now, if you start having too much of a debit or having too much of a credit, you start selling all the jackets and I don't buy anything for anybody else. You have a visitor. There are two people coming to actually help you, saying, all right, why is it that you go negative? Okay, is there a reason that you go too far? Okay, we're going to ask you to stop doing that. Okay, we're going to put a limit. As this is electronic, you can't spend them. Okay, the rules are there. There are limits if you don't on both sides. If you accumulate too much of the credit as well, that's not good, because you're not buying enough from other people. Okay, the ideal is to go through zero.
Okay, thank you. I understand now.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And last but not least.
Certainly not. Hi, I'm Dawn, and I'm sort of here as a delegate from Parkdale. There's a bunch of us who are thinking that why can't we have an alternative currency here?
A complementary currency?
A complementary currency, well, a local currency.
Local currency
specifically
grant.
a local currency, because we have a situation, we're kind of a poor part of town, and we have a situation where we have people who want things and people who want to do things or have made things or something. So we should have a market,
Yes.
except we don't have any money.
Okay.
So
Sounds
we thought,
familiar.
well, we can make some up.
Yes.
Yes.
So, and we already have, for instance, our West End Food Co-op has little wooden discs, market money. Everybody in Canada knows about Canadian Tire Money. I
Yes.
think that's probably one of the first complementary currencies ever.
Yes.
Yes, it's corporate script.
Yeah, but
It's a complementary
each,
currency.
each of them have a specific purpose,
Yes,
and presumably the design would be, you would design this currency to do certain things.
Yes.
Yes.
So you have to spend a lot of time figuring out what you want it to do before you can, like,
Absolutely.
Start-
It's the idea.
start drawing things.
If you,
Yeah,
if you
it's
don't
the
know
idea
what you want to
we'll
do, you probably will not get there.
So it's going back to
and heaven only knows where you
it's
might
going
get.
back to the idea of a pull versus a push. So it's not. It's the idea is you just don't dream up an idea. Oh, gee whiz, this would be a great currency. You've got to go into your community, find what the unused resources are, and there are many, and the unmet needs, and there are many, and you may design one currency or several currencies in order to address that.
Right.
Okay, so maybe an elderly care currency
Thank
or
you.
a shop local currency, whatever it is.
All right. But with that, I think that you'll have more time to speak with Vern and Jackie if you go and purchase their book just outside. So I invite you to do that, and they will be happy to sign it.
Love to.
I want to give Vern and Jackie just one final round of applause here.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to talk more about currencies, want to go into one of your please talk to us.